Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the J&J Show. We are here once again to try to bring you some information that you may not get in other places. That's one of our main objectives here on the J&J Show, is to discuss topics that are relevant to Christian life and the Christian walk, important topics that you may not hear at church or hear discussed in other places, whether it's information that's overlooked or flat out ignored. Whatever the case may be, we feel that there's a gap that we can help to try to shed some light on some information and some issues in today's world that many Christians are very concerned about, very interested in, but don't really know where to turn and look to get answers to some of these questions. And another thing I want to mention off the top too is that Jeff and I do not claim to be preaching in any of these episodes. As far as we're not giving Bible lessons or anything like that. We do reference the Bible a great deal, but this is by no means designed to be the equivalent of a sermon or anything like that whatsoever. We're basically hitting these subjects and discussing them and trying to go through and answer questions and make things clear. There's a lot of information out there that is floating around, and sometimes just connecting the dots is all it takes to help people. I know I've had a lot of dots connected over the past few years, and it's really gratifying, and it builds your faith to see exactly what some of the answers are with some of these mysteries and some of the challenges that we have. And tonight we're going to talk about another mystery, and that is the Lord and the good things that he does in our lives and why it is that he cares about us so much. We've spent the past couple episodes talking about spiritual warfare, which inherently is involved a lot of discussion of the devil and his army and his forces. And both Jeff and I got the feeling like we're going to be spending even more time on that coming up, but that we really were eager in this. Our spirits both were kind of sensing that we wanted to get back on a God topic. And I don't like to talk about the enemy very long before I get back to talking about the one who saved us and the one who blesses us and guides us and leads us. Because if it wasn't for him, then these other forces would basically have their way with all of us if he were not intervening, as he so often does. And the Lord really does do miraculous things in our lives. Just salvation itself is miraculous. But there are times in our lives when he will go even beyond what we would normally expect in order to deliver us from situations or to save us from physical harm or even death. And we're going to focus on one of these tonight, which is an incident that occurred in Jeff's family that I've only heard about really once before, a couple years ago. And it truly is amazing. And then after you spend some time on that, we'll probably get into our number one favorite subject, which is other times that we've heard from the Lord and when he's guided us. But without too much delay, I wanted to hand it over to Jeff and really have him describe for us what really is kind of an amazing incident, because you don't have this happen very often. And it's clear that the Lord intervened here, but I don't want to steal his thunder. So Jeff, just give us an idea of what exactly it was that happened to your dad on that evening.
Well, what happened can only be described as a miracle. There's really no other word for it. We'll get into this in the story, but if you were to try to explain this story away with coincidence, there is no way that many coincidences aligned in such a short amount of time the way they did in this story that can explain away this story in any other way than to call it a miracle. And when I tell this story, I like to refer to the miracle in it as a modern day miracle, but that's because we read about miracles in the Bible during ancient times, and the miracles written about in Scripture they're really something to behold. And they're absolutely amazing to think about and extremely hard for us to wrap our heads around, much less think about those miracles happening today in this day and age. It just seems impossible for us, at least, but we all know that nothing is impossible for God. I think one reason why we don't think of miracles like that happening today, like the burning bush, or even God, like audibly hearing God speak to us like they did in the Old Testament, is because they don't happen anymore today. And I think that's on us as a people, as a whole, the world as a whole, because we're a lot farther from God now than we were back in the Old Testament, or back when they were in the Old Testament. But, all that said, though, the God we talk about, the one we talk to, pray to, and have a relationship with, is the same God that Abraham talked to. So let that sink in for a second. You're talking to the same God that talked to Abraham, to Moses, to David, and the same God that performed these miracles in the Old Testament. So when we think about miracles happening today, it's the same God we're dealing with, and the miracles are no less extraordinary now than they were back then. And I just wanted to preface my story with that. So without further ado, we're gonna jump into this tale here. I was off at college when this happened, and I still remember getting the call from my grandfather. I rolled over in bed, and my phone was ringing, of course, and it woke me up early in the morning. And well, not that early, but early for a college student. So I saw my mom's name on the screen, and I answered it, and it was my grandfather's voice, and I could tell in an instant that he was deadly serious, that something was wrong. I was about an hour and a half away from my hometown, and he called and told me that my dad had a heart attack, and that they were at the hospital, and he was currently in surgery. And my mom couldn't talk, so she was too upset. So he called me to let me know, and I immediately, I was just in a daze talking to him. I don't really remember everything that was said. I just kind of remember just responding like, okay, all right, I was dumbstruck, and I remember hanging up with him and rolling over and immediately start praying that he would be okay to God. And he turned out he was okay, as we prefaced before. God intervened with a miracle to save his life. But that's actually what this story is about. My father that day was working about 20 miles south of the town we live in, or it was 20 miles north. It was 20 miles away from the town we live in now, and it was down a busy 2-lane highway. And his profession, he drove a big bucket truck. It's one of these big utility trucks you see riding down the road. They're up in the bucket fixing the telephone poles. He was in one of those trucks, and he drove 30 plus minutes down a busy 2-lane highway through town, through 20 to 30 stoplights, after having a heart attack. And that day he was working, and he started to have chest pains, and then he started to have pains in his left arm, normal signs of a heart attack. And he knew something was wrong immediately. He knew he needed to get to the hospital. And to do that, like I said, he would have to drive more than 30 minutes down a busy 2-lane highway. And along this highway I've driven this route many, many times, and there is at least 20 to 30 stoplights, maybe even more. But as he got in his truck, and his big utility bucket truck, he was driving through traffic. He said that once he got in the cab of the truck, an orange aura surrounded him. And he knew, like, the entire inside of the cab of his truck was orange. It was glowing. It was this aura around him, and he knew it was keeping him safe. He just had that instinct. He knew that it would keep him safe. As he was driving, before we get to the stoplight part, I wanted to mention that he said that he didn't even feel like he was driving his truck. He was just kind of gliding down the road, like his truck was being directed by some otherworldly force. And it felt more like he was just gliding down this road, as he remembers it, surrounded by this orange aura. And every single stoplight during that route, every single light was green. Not a single light turned red. Not a single light even turned yellow. Every light was green the entire way, from where he was outside of the town, through downtown, all the way to the hospital. Every single light was green. A 30-minute ride, more than 30 minutes, 20 miles from outside one of the, I think we're the third largest town in North Carolina, if that gives you any hint to where we live. Or I should say city. But to drive that distance through downtown of one of the busiest, largest cities in the state, with every single light green all the way to the hospital, there's no way to describe what happened that day except to call it a miracle, because God was with him in that truck, and God got him to the hospital, and just in time. He pulled his truck up to the emergency room, and he got out, and he said as soon as he got out, the glow went away. It was just gone in an instant, like somebody turned off a light switch. It was just gone. He went inside and told him he was having a heart attack, and they got him into surgery. And afterward, the surgery was successful, and he would be fine. He's still fine today. The doctor told him after that surgery that had he not gotten to the hospital right when he did, they would not have saved his life. He got to the hospital just in time for them to save his life. And, that to me just points more to the fact that God was with him, and God was guiding him and controlling the events surrounding this instance. And, a lot of skeptics would try, like I said, to explain this away using coincidence, but come on, that's way too many coincidences to happen just like that, all in a row, all at the same time, to get him to the hospital just in time to save his life. I don't discount that there are coincidences in this world, but that's not one of them. This was not one of them. There's nothing. True believers know what happened that day. God intervened. He protected my dad in the truck while he was driving. He kept every single light green. That's the thing that stands out to me the most. Every single light was green all the way.
Definitely.
That is, amazing all in itself, but to add it to everything else that was going on, the aura in the truck surrounding him that he knew was keeping him safe, the way that his truck was just gliding down the road, the fact that the doctor told him afterward that he had just gotten to the hospital on time. God was with him that day. God was in that truck with him. God got him to the hospital just in time. And as I mentioned before, you think about the miracles mentioned in the Bible, and they're so, I don't want to say far-fetched, but I mentioned a little bit before there, it's hard for us to wrap our minds around things like that actually happening, because they don't happen today. But yeah, I'm here to tell you, and my dad is too, that miracles do happen today, and he's alive today because of one.
That's something. I tell you, and the part of southeastern Virginia where I live, if you can get through 2 green lights, that's considered a miracle. So to get through 20 is absolutely amazing. That clearly was the Lord. And the reason why the Lord was doing that, we don't necessarily know, because the fact of the matter is that Lazarus, after being raised from the dead, eventually died. I mean, Lazarus isn't still walking the earth today. And so, the reason that the Lord chose, because people die of heart attacks all the time, even Christians do. The reason why the Lord decided that day, not today, you're not going to pass away on this day, may have had to do with your dad. It may have had to do with your mom. Perhaps the Lord knew, no, it's not time yet for her to be a widow. It may have been because of Jeff, you and your brother. We just don't know the reason why. Only the Lord knows. But the fact of the matter is, he did intervene. It could have been strictly for your dad. It may have been that your dad was going to grow closer to him as a result of this. And so we just don't know. I imagine your dad has more insight into the reasons why, but maybe he may not even know for sure. And it's not really important for us to know for sure. The fact of the matter is that he did it. And that's something. It really is. It's now what happened after that?
Like the surgery went fine, and he
Did he get
would be okay.
stents?
Yes, yeah, he
Yeah.
had I think 3 stents, 2 major blockages. One was one artery
Hmm.
was completely blocked. Um, it's kind of hard for me to remember. It's been 20 years now, but I just remember my mom telling me, like, he told her and she was relaying the story to me, and I was just sitting there, my jaw was just hanging open, and I was just, shaking my head at the fact that, wow, my dad just experienced a miracle and he's still here because of one. But like you said, there could be any number of reasons why.
Yeah. I've never experienced anything like that. Not even close. The only thing that I remember very clearly was in 2002, as I mentioned in previous episodes, my dad had a heart attack, and they thought they had fixed it, and then just like 2 days later, he had another heart attack, which was far more severe. And I was at home when I got the call from mom that he had had a second heart attack, and instantly at this point, you realize real quick, okay, this isn't good. The chances of mortality here are extremely good, and the likelihood that when I get to the hospital, which is about 10 minutes away, I just come home from the hospital to feed the dogs, let the dogs out or something, because he was already in the hospital because of the previous heart attack, the smaller one, which almost killed him itself. So I had about a 10-minute ride to the hospital, and very aware. I mean, I was very aware of what would probably be awaiting me when I got there. And I remember being very calm. And I remember the entire way, it was as if someone was sitting in the passenger seat. I didn't see anybody. I didn't, but it felt just as if someone was sitting in the, I don't know if it was, I was perceiving an angel that was sent there, because we know that angels are sent on those types of missions to provide a calming influence. I don't know if it was the Lord himself, or what it was, but the whole way to the hospital and then walking up the steps and walking down the hallway, I just remember that presence. It was supernatural. It wasn't a miracle, but it was supernatural. And of course, I got there and they were rushing him off to a bigger hospital. And it was funny. My mom said that she still talks about the ambulance ride, that they went over 90 miles an hour. And there was this young, what seemed like a teenage girl that was driving the ambulance. And she was just calm the entire time, saying to my mom, "Oh, just don't worry. I'm sure he's going to be fine," weaving in and out of traffic, going 90 miles an hour. And mom was like, "Listen, just watch the road,
Right.
because otherwise we're all going to be going to the hospital."
Right.
And he had to have major open heart surgery, and but he did recover. But then a month later, he had a bunch of leg issues. They couldn't diagnose exactly what that was, and that led to one of his legs having to be amputated, and then that got infected, and they had to amputate again. And it was not diabetes. Everybody always asks that. And so then about a month later, we found out he had terminal cancer. And so all this occurred between the end of January and June, early June, and he had had like 7 operations before they finally amputated and whatnot. And there's a whole story in with this that is very. We'll do another episode sometime as to why all this was happening and the effect that this 6-month period had on myself and my family. Um, it's relevant because it was a Job type experience. I'm not comparing myself to Job. I'm not saying this was exactly what happened to Job, or that it was anywhere near as bad as what happened to Job, because it was not. However, it was that type of experience. And I'm a firm believer that if you're a Christian long enough, eventually that type of experience will probably come your way, because the Lord does test us the way that he allowed Job to be tested. And that's a whole another episode that is that we can do coming down the road. But that's really something. Have you had anything else that you wanted to talk about that
Well,
along those lines?
It's funny you mentioned your car ride to the hospital and how you felt a reassuring presence and peace. Because I drove home the next day, hour and a half, and you would have thought I would have been like urgently like speeding down the road, weaving in and out of traffic like that ambulance driver. But for some reason, I was calm, and I just kind of had this feeling. I was still very, very worried, but I had this feeling that everything's going to be okay. This calming presence come over me that everything was going to be okay. Of course, it was really hard to walk into the hospital and see him in there, but I still just somehow kind of knew that it was going to be all right. And he did have another heart attack, not nearly as big as this one, a few years later. And I knew then too. I was just my mom called me. It was after a baseball game, and I was on my way home, and she called me. And as I was driving home, I started praying, and another feeling like that came over me. It was like, and I just somehow knew, even though I was still worried and scared to death, I just somehow knew that it was going to be okay and that he was going to pull through. And I think, that feeling, well, I don't think, I know that feeling came from God, and it was just his way of letting me know, and why it happened, we still don't know. There's, there's nothing's happened since then that's pointed to as to why that happened. I think maybe you hit on it that, maybe we needed him, me, my brother, and my mom, because, he's our rock. He's always been there to lead us. And, I think maybe you hit on it right there that it wasn't his time yet because we still needed him. So, right. I don't have any answers for you as far as, why it happened, nothing like, no divine intervention has happened since then. Nothing's really happened. So we don't really have an answer. I mean, we're very grateful, and we're very glad that it did happen that way. But as to why, who knows? Even if God let us know, we probably wouldn't understand it anyway, because sometimes we're not meant to.
Exactly. I work in the history field, and so and I'm a big Civil War buff. And Stonewall Jackson, of course, was a very devout Christian and a Presbyterian, and as such, he believed very firmly that the time for his death was already set. And the Bible does, I don't really get into the Presbyterian, I'm not the Calvinist type of predestination and how much we have free will, how much is already, determined ahead of time about our lives. Because the fact of the matter is, on something like that, there's plenty of evidence in the Bible to support an argument that yes, our steps are already ordained beforehand, and that we also have free will. And I find that it's a very good mixture of both. So that's, your dad, he didn't go because it wasn't the time the Lord had set for him to go. And that's exactly what Jackson thought, that they said that he never had any fear in battle, because he said nothing would happen to him until it was his time to go. And that's taking it to the extreme, but it's really not, I don't really see it as being faulty logic at all. I don't do that. I don't, necessarily take that approach, but then again, I don't go, through combat either. So it's a little bit different. And I don't drive crazy or anything like that. So you don't want to tempt, you don't want to tempt the Lord, but Jackson wasn't tempting the Lord. He was simply doing what his job was, and that was, being a soldier. So that's very interesting. When it comes to, you mentioned, I noticed that you said on previous shows that, and I obviously right now, you're a Christian that I would define as being very much on fire for the Lord, in a way that the Lord really wants us all to be. And you've recently caught fire just a couple of years ago. But I did notice that you said that even though this was 20 years ago, your first reaction when you got word was to roll over and pray. And that goes to the fact that you said you have known the Lord and been a Christian for a long time, or since you were much younger, but that it's been recent. And that reason I bring this up is because it really does point out that there are different levels that we can that we can walk in our Christian faith, just like an athlete. An athlete can play church league sports, or an athlete can play in Major League Baseball, or an athlete can play in AAA. And so it's the same thing with our spiritual walk. We can either be little league and just, not really put a great deal of life effort into it, or we can be completely and utterly absorbed in our walk with the Lord and treat it almost like a life profession, like athletes, professional athletes. Say what you will, some people like them, some people don't. I find that most of them seem to be very likable individuals, but one thing's for sure, they all put in a tremendous amount of time and seriousness into their job, or their calling, if you will. And Christians, we really should approach it the same way, and that's the way that you're approaching it, and that's the way that the Lord wants all of us to approach it. We are not to have a laissez-faire attitude in regards to our walk with the Lord. Because that's, when you put very little effort in, you're saying to the Lord that you don't really value your relationship with him enough to really invest in it, to really be as concerned with it as we might be concerned about the news, or concerned about our favorite sports team, or concerned about Facebook. So I just thought that was interesting, because you had mentioned before that you made a point that you were in fact already saved before 2020, before you really caught fire. And, and I think a lot of Christians don't know that there are levels that you can go up. It's not just a one level, a flat plane. You get saved, and then there are level, and Paul talks about that. Paul says, he not ridicules, but he corrects some of the people when he points out that you guys are still hung up on milk. You haven't advanced yet to meat. You're still like babes in Christ. And he was telling them that you haven't advanced in it. Since you've gotten saved, you're at the same level. And you might say, well, what's all this level stuff? How do I do that? What do I got to do? Go to church Sunday nights as well? Or what do I got to be in charge of all these different missions? I got to become a missionary? No. As Jeff and I are trying to point out in these episodes, it's about your relationship with him, the time you spend with him. Time is our most valuable asset. It just is. It's what we value. Some people can say money, but I feel like time is money a lot of times. And so therefore we guard our time, and we value our time so much that that's what we typically give the Lord, just the bare minimum. And do we give the Lord our first offering? Do we give him our first fruits when it comes to time? When you get up early in the morning and you start your day with him, you're doing that. I realize there are some folks who have to be at work an hour before sunset, and they can't afford to get up early in the morning. So I know a gentleman in my Bible study, and he's in that boat. So he has his prayer time at night, and he just had an amazing experience last week in his prayer time because he's kind of caught fire, and he's investing time into his relationship with the Lord. And that's what the Lord wants. The Lord says he values loyalty more than sacrifice. It says that, and I got it written down, but it's not with me here. It's Old Testament verse. He desires loyalty more than sacrifice. And that loyalty is a love of him, that you want to spend time with him, that you want to fall in love. We've got to put it on here at some point. There is, and we're going to get to this. It's coming up. The end times prophetic stuff. There is a video that was done on this, and I don't want to get into all what it was about. That's not really what's important. But at one point, this woman had a dream, and in this dream, she was chasing after and trying to catch up with him, and she couldn't. And she was getting more and more nervous, almost panic stricken, because he was getting further away, and she was running to try to catch up in this dream, and yet she couldn't. And she began to cry and was very upset. Eventually, long story short, she caught up with the Lord and realized that the reason why it had been so difficult to catch up to him is because of the gap that she had allowed to get between him and her life by focusing on other stuff. And he said that he was returning soon in this dream. He told her, I'm returning soon, and I'm afraid that many of my people are going to be in a bad place for eternity because they've allowed this gap to come between myself and them. And then he said this. He said, they don't understand that they're the love of my life. And I thought that was really amazing that he said that to her, that that we are the love of his life, and he should be the love of our lives as well. And if you spend enough time with him, that will develop. It just will. It takes time. You know, I was a Christian a long time before I really understood loving the Lord. It's and for guys, it can be, I guess, a little bit different. I think a lot of women see the Lord in more of a fatherly figure role, which is very good. I think that's great for them. We, you know, for us, at times that can be a little bit more difficult, but nevertheless, it shouldn't be. It's because we're all his children if we have him, if he's saved us and planted that seed in us. Um, well, what else did you want to have to say about that? I have a couple of smaller stories, but I didn't want to intervene until you were done.
That's pretty much it. I mean, you made the point, but it's exactly what came to my mind when you start talking about the athletes and how they get to the different levels. It's all about the work you put in, but it's also, you know, you already touched on that, so I won't go too much into, you know, the work you have to put in, but you have to make sacrifices also. Like, you know, athletes, if they want to make it to the major leagues, they, you know, pass up nights out with their friends, or they pass up, or I don't want to say pass up, but they have to sacrifice certain things in order to get their bodies and themselves, physically and mentally ready to get to the next level of their sport. And, you know, we have to do the same thing as Christians. We need to prepare physically and mentally. I mean, I don't want to say, you know, Christians who drink beer or anything like that, you know, excuse me, they're any less of Christians. But if you're going out and you're getting blackout drunk every night, then, you know, there's going to be much more of a gap between you and the Lord than, say, someone who treats their body like the temple it's supposed to be for the Lord.
Right.
And I myself used to drink alcohol. I don't anymore. I've recently quit, and, you know, even having a beer every now and then. But, you know, you have to get to that point where you have to sacrifice certain things, and you have to say, is this worth it, in order to get close to the Lord? And you have to let certain things go, even if they're things you enjoy. Now that's not to say I'm a perfect person. I still make my mistakes, and, you know, I still, you know, do certain things I shouldn't do. But
We all
the
do.
fact that some, you know, when I do stumble and I do fall, the first one there to pick me up is the Lord. And I know recently a couple of times I have stumbled and fallen, but the first person there is God. And he fills me with the Holy Spirit, and he gives me that reassuring feeling. He's like, yes, you failed at this. No, I'm not turning my back on you. No, I'm not abandoning you. You're mine. You know, I'm his and he's mine. Pretty much is the back and forth there. But, you know, he's always the first one there when I do make a mistake. And he reassures me and lets me know that, you know, this isn't a damning offense. I'm not going to be, you know, damned to hell for all eternity just because I slipped up and made one mistake. I mean, we're human. We sin every single day. You know, whether it be a passing thought that we don't even realize, you know, we're not perfect. We're not Jesus, but we should still strive to be. But you will stumble and fall along the way.
Until we get our glorified bodies, we're always going to make mistakes. The sinning and the messing up is going to continue to happen, and, you know, but we ought not to walk in sin necessarily. And there is a difference in that. But Paul says that, you know, even he says that that which I do not want to do is what I find myself doing. So even Paul struggled with it. It's human. Our human nature does not go away, and the closer we get to the Lord, the stronger we are in the spirit, and the flesh and the spirit are always battling each other. And the more you're strong in the spirit, your flesh is subservient to that, and you're not going to be as subjected to the will of the flesh, whatever that may be. You know, conversely, when you're doing everything that the human nature wants, and you're not really seeking the Lord, then the spirit is subservient, and you're more likely to fall into to error. And so we really can help ourselves by, again, seeking the Lord and walking closely to him. But it's never going to be something where we've completely whipped sin and we're perfect until we get our glorified bodies and that we're with him. And so Christians really, ought to remember that. And we have to work to not beat ourselves up too much when we make mistakes, because we can do that. And the enemy's right there to try to help us, you really screwed up this time, or the Lord's not going to tolerate this again. This is a second time you've messed up like this. The Lord understands that. The Lord understands, especially if he knows you're trying, and what the circumstances are. And but that's another episode. It's just important for us to remember, like you said, that we're going to make mistakes, and that's we've got to pick ourselves up and continue on. And because the Lord paid a hefty price for us to be able to do that. And that's what he wants us to do. And there are times when I've made mistakes and I'm still apologizing. And I get the sense the Lord's like, I've already forgiven you for that. Why are you still bringing it up? That's in the past. And sometimes we have to make sure that we let go, because I have a feeling that he forgives a lot faster than we're willing to receive his forgiveness a lot of times. And, but that comes from us wanting to please him, and that's not a bad thing. If we grovel a little too much, it's because we want to please him and we're upset when we disappoint him. And that's not a bad thing. That's a better problem to have than somebody who just sins constantly and they don't care if it upsets the Lord or not. You don't want to be in that place. But like you said, also with some of these things, Christians will put themselves in situations sometimes. We were talking about the bars and whatnot. Remember in last video, we talked about John Ramirez when he was a warlock, when he was a Satanist. He would intentionally go into bars knowing he would find weak Christians in there drinking and partying. And he would go in there with the sole express purpose of trying to put a curse on them. And basically, when I'm talking about putting a curse on somebody, it's getting a demon to enter into these people. And he was very successful at it. And again, you might say, well, he couldn't do that. A demon can't go into a Christian. I hate to say, I'm afraid to say that, yes, they very much can. And there are Christians now who are very much saved, who are in need of deliverance because the unclean spirit has gotten inside of them. And there's a lot of Christians right now that really could be set free. And we did this last episode, so I don't want to get into it too much. But like I said, it is my passion right now, the direction I want to go. There's a lot of Christians who could be delivered from some bad stuff, addictions, depression, and whatnot. But they're trying to do it on their own. They don't realize that it's a spiritual battle they have to fight. And the only other thing too I want to mention that was was not a miracle, but it's another good example of how the Lord walking with him will help us out. When Amy and I first got married, we were going to build a house on the property adjacent to where we live now. It's a 3.5 acre property, and she and I were going to put a house on the hill next door. And we were pretty good ways into the planning of this. We hadn't put any money down or whatnot, but we had already talked to contractors and told them what we wanted. And my dad was cutting grass, and he came and told us. He said, I was cutting grass just a couple hours ago, and the Lord spoke to me very clearly, because he was also planning in his mind, because he was going to be very involved in us building the house as well, because he was excited about that. It was his kind of project, So he was making all sorts of plans. And as he was doing this, the Lord spoke to him and said, "Where am I in all of this planning?" And he didn't really, the Lord didn't wait for a response. It wasn't something where the Lord was looking for an answer, but the Lord told him, "Where am I in all of this? You guys are planning all this out, but none of you have really come to me about it." So Dad told Amy and I that, and we instantly put a stop to all the planning. And we're like, okay, clearly there's something here that the Lord wants us to put the brakes on this. We don't know what it is. And so we did. We just, okay, it's going on the back burner. We had already taken trips and looked at log cabins and stuff and had floor plans. Like I said, we hadn't spent any money yet, but we put a complete hold on this whole project. And it was, October, November, December, January. It was exactly 4 months later that Dad had his heart attack. And had we been in the process of starting building that house, we would have been stuck, because Dad, eventually, he passed away 3 years later, and we have the house now that he owned, and we would have been stuck in a situation with two houses on one piece of property. We wouldn't have been able to afford both of them. So we would have had to have sold one to strangers, and we've been sharing our property that's kind of been a family property with a stranger family we didn't know. It would have been a disaster, an unmitigated family disaster. It would have been a mess. And the Lord delivered us out of that with one sentence: "Where am I in all this planning?" And we had the sense to listen to him. At times, some people are very hard-headed, and they'll be like, well, that must mean that he wants to tell us what kind of drapes that, so we'll let him make some decisions later on, but we're going to press on, and because this is what we want. And they'll press on right into the valley of disaster. But thankfully at this point we had learned that when the Lord speaks, you listen. And so we did a pretty good sized U-turn, and to this day we're glad that we did, because it would have. And that's the kind of thing that when you're walking with the Lord, that he will feel very comfortable speaking stuff like that to you. And at times he won't speak that clearly. At times he might have somebody say it to you. Another person might say it to you, but he gets his message across. He's very good at getting his point across, whether he uses dreams or whether he uses another person. Bible verses, I have had Bible verses, and a lot of Christians have had experiences where the words just seem to leap off the page, and okay, I just read that. That wasn't a normal situation. The Lord just quickened that. And that verse is for me right now, right here. And he does that. I found that one to be not as common. I've only had that, I think, twice, that I really, maybe 3 times, that I really can recall. But he does. That's one of his many tools that he'll use to speak to you if you're seeking him.
I mentioned earlier I've got a couple of other endeavors that I'm trying to do for the Lord, and they're, it's slow going to get something started, especially on the internet. I'm trying to start a website. Well, I have started a website, and I'm trying to get the accompanying YouTube channel off the ground with it. And obviously there's roadblocks with both of those things. You try to advertise it as much as you can on, social media or wherever. And, you do hit roadblocks, and you do hit, standstills in your growth, and it's very frustrating. And, sometimes you just feel like giving up. Sometimes you just get so frustrated that it's like, where is this going? Is it even going anywhere? It's like, I'm, not to try to question the Lord or his plan, because, I fully believe that these things are his plan for my life. But at certain times it's like, am I doing the right thing here? Should I be doing this, or is this something else? Is this what you meant for me to be doing? You start to wonder these things. And then out of nowhere, let's see, it was a couple of weeks ago. Well, actually, yeah, about 2 weeks ago, I was feeling that way, and the Lord just out of nowhere, the thought just clearly came into my mind. It says, "You keep doing what you're doing, Jeff. It's going to happen." And
that's great.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I had just, I have an Instagram account for what I'm trying to do there, and I was looking up a verse to put on that Instagram account, and I don't remember the verse, but it was the Lord is not unjust. It basically letting us know that he sees what we're doing. He knows that you're trying to do things for him, and he will take care of you. I wish I could remember the verse, but basically that was the gist of it. And he's like, just letting me know, I see what you're doing. Don't give up. It's going to happen. I'm here with you. I'm guiding you. And that let me know right there that, what I'm doing, the path I'm going down is the path that it is the right path. There will be something that will come of it. Just push through the rough patches and the frustration. And, that's, I don't really see that. I guess it is kind of a miracle to have the Lord speak to you the way he does, but that's just another story that, his presence here, and, he is with us, and he is guiding us, and he is leading us to a higher purpose.
Yep. He really is. It's, there's something that those that are desperate for him, and seeking him, he likes that. He responds to that a very, I mean, he loves everybody. He is love. But when someone is desperately trying to do something, to obey his commands, whatever it may be, whatever endeavor. I think about Pat Robertson, who's a controversial figure. And, I'm not on here saying everything Pat Robertson's ever done has been perfect. I mean, the man's obviously, in my mind, he's very clearly saved. He's very clearly done a lot of very good things. I really enjoy a lot of his early teaching back when he was very, very young, much younger. But when he got to Virginia Beach and was going to start CBN, I mean, he tells a story about living in a house where people would stand outside the window all hours of the night and curse. That he said they could never get the house above 50 some degrees or whatnot in the wintertime. It had air coming up through the floorboards. It was a dump. And he told his wife, he said, never complain. He said, never complain, because if you complain, you'll go around that mountain, referring to Sinai, a bunch more times. And the Lord was watching to see how persistent he was going to be. And after a time, all of a sudden the Lord, this is just one example, that you can think of all kinds of examples of this, where the Lord finally saw that he was sticking to it, that he wasn't turning back, and the Lord rewarded him. And look at what it turned into. I mean, it's the university, the 700 Club has done a lot of amazing things for a lot of people. I know a lot of folks like to bash it, and I'm not on here, rah for Pat Robertson. I think he's fine. I guess I'm not a big. I don't really follow a lot of TV guys anyway, but I do know one thing, that the 700 Club was instrumental in getting my mom saved. And when my mom got saved, that was instrumental in a big step towards eventually my dad getting saved, and having the two of them saved was a big reason why growing up I got saved. And you trace that back, and where do you get? You get to a man named Pat Robertson that started a ministry in Virginia Beach and had a television show that had a powerful story, and ministered to my mom when she was wondering about these things, and she got saved. This was in the late 70s, and from watching the 700 Club. And so we ought to be, as Christians, we ought to be extremely careful before we bash and criticize. There's a lot said now. I agree that Christians can be far too critical of other Christians right now. We don't need that. Yes, if someone's way outside of the bounds of what is accepted in the Bible, what the Bible talks about, then sure, they need to be corrected in a loving way, and we shouldn't follow false teachers and whatnot. But it's gotten to the point now where if anyone just expresses a view that we disagree with, automatically they're accused of being a false prophet. And we really got to rein that in, because there are certainly false prophets out there, but somebody disagreeing with us, I disagree with Pat Robertson on a lot of things, but I would never call him a false prophet, just because I disagree with him on a bunch of stuff, because I know that he's on the same team as I am, and the Lord loves him. And I believe that he loves the Lord. And I'm not really getting on this to talk about Pat Robertson so much, but that this is a big issue in the church right now. We really have to be careful when it comes to ripping into each other and criticizing each other. There's a lot of division, especially, and I tell you, the social media has just made it worse for everybody, not just Christians, but certainly Christians have not handled the social media thing. And I'm as guilty as the next person. I've had to really, the past few years, I've had to really say, okay, you know what? I'm going down this road just like a lot of people have. I've got to rein this back in. And I've really kind of withdrawn myself from a lot of it. I almost never do the Facebook thing anymore because it, just for various reasons. Nothing wrong with Facebook. I think it has a lot of great attributes, but as Christians, we definitely got to make sure that not only are we walking, like we said earlier, in a way that is not hypocritical, but that we show love to others. And a lot of times telling people that they don't have a clue or calling people morons on social media is not really showing the love of the Lord the way that it really should be. And so did you have anything else you wanted to add? I see we're getting down on time.
No, that's pretty much it for me.
All right. I think coming up, we're going to be hitting some pretty heavy issues. This one here was much more positive, more lighthearted, especially hearing about the amazing experience that Jeff's dad had. And I think coming up, we're not really going to go back into the dark stuff as much, but we have some other things. We really have, except for our number one topic, which is hearing from the Lord and walking close to the Lord. That's our number one subject we like more than any. But other than that, some of our other real big ones we really haven't even touched on yet. And it's almost like a Christmas present that we're intentionally saving the presents that we suspect are going to be the most exciting for for later on. But I think now the time we're pretty well poised. We're going to dive into some of these in upcoming episodes. And like Jeff said, we don't do this. And actually, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and close us out? Because I like the way you do that.
Yeah, pretty much touched on this in every episode. In the closing, we don't do this for the clicks. We don't do it for the subscriptions or the likes. We are just trying to spread our message. We're just trying to spread God's word, and we're just trying to relay the message that He is trying to speak through us. So, we would love to have you back in the next episode. If you'd like to come, if you want to subscribe, that's great. If you have any questions or comments, write them out below, or I'll put the email in the description. You can email us, and one of us will get back to you. But we're really here just to spread God's word. We're not here to try to monetize this channel or get millions of subscribers. That'd be great, because that means we'd be getting the word out there. But that's just a byproduct of what we're trying to do here. We're not, the sole purpose of this channel is not to get as many subscribers as we can. So we just want to spread God's word. And we've said this before, and we haven't mentioned it in a couple episodes, but we're just two guys. And if we can do it, and if we can put in the effort to get to those higher levels that we were speaking about earlier, and have God speak directly to us and work through us, and push us to get out of our comfort zones and show our ugly mugs on YouTube and spread His message, then you can too. You can too. If God chooses us, He'll choose you too. All you got to do is put in the effort. So, I'm sure our moms would disagree with that ugly mug comment. And that was just a joke, Mom. I'm extremely handsome, I know. Who wouldn't like you?
Yeah, that's right. Who doesn't like you? But there might be somebody who doesn't like you.
Well, we'll throw in the occasional Seinfeld reference like we just did. So, come on back if you want to. If you want to subscribe, that'd be great. But it's not the sole purpose of this channel. So that's gonna be the end of this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. God bless.